See what pops up if we just open this book, turn a couple of pages. All of us need to comprehend the four jewels of the sun, the moon, the breath of heaven, and the breath of earth. One more jewel is essential: purification of the spirit. These 5 jewels will purify and harmonize the world. It is not only Ueshiba who can accomplish this. Anyone who shares my vision can also have such experiences. I will always help anyone who is sincere in his or her quest. Build a magnificent Buddha tower within your soul. One does not need consecrated ground or a building to house Buddha nature. I long for the day when each individual will be a living shrine. Each and every one of us can become an all-victorious Buddha or Kanzeon Bosatsu. The Buddha is male, Kanzeon Bosatsu is female. Beings that work for the salvation of all in any guise. If that happens, our nation itself will become one huge Buddha tower. Think like this and you will understand the rationale of Aikido. At present, material science has advanced to such a state that we have televisions that can transmit in all corners of the globe. But if we can take one step further, the spirit will bloom and flower, and people will be able to read each other's minds without any kind of physical transmitters. I believe that such a day will come. And that right there is, we're facing just a very dire time. And you could say that's a real optimistic viewpoint. In other words, that he's really talking about things that are quite beautiful. We're facing a very difficult time right at this moment with the pandemic, with other situations. So it seems the world is in a very, very bad place. And, my read on that, is that this is kind of like a trial or a test. In a lot of ways, I think the words that he puts out, which are very beautiful, serve to strengthen us so that we can deal with the situation. And the situation is a pandemic that seems out of control, and there's a promise in the future of vaccines, and there's just a lot of uncertainty. Restrictions are probably for the immediate future going to get more restrictive. So within that, what he really talks about is building a Buddha tower, being a shrine. And I guess part of that would be, and we're in isolation, so obviously it really is more challenging. But to be that beacon, which means, we don't ignore what's going on. but feeling, going into compassion. The compassion giving a type of interior light and warmth. A solidity, a strength to our resolve that is very powerful. I thought it was interesting that maybe 5-6 years ago, there was a huge, massive earthquake in Japan. And the Iwama dojo was affected by that. The Aiki Jinja, which is right next to it, was not. It was originally pretty much built by Ueshiba Osensei. And so there's something that represented that was kind of unshakable, even in a massive earthquake. And so right now we are in what you would call the throes of the pandemic. Right? There's even more serious stuff coming out about, the hacking of our computer system, our governmental stuff. So we're almost like, okay, it's a multiple attack. And that part of a black belt exam is in a lot of ways, it's very challenging. Because if you fix on one thing, the other ones overwhelm you. If you try to run from multiple directions of energy at you, you create angles where they actually converge on you. So what's very difficult is to find the creases. And even though we are very flexible, there is a type of strength. You must be flexible with a type of strength, not just elusive. And so this is, as usual, it's a very, very important time. Yes, spam. In fact, what I'm going to do, okay. So, well, turn this off. And so there's a lot of change happening. And one of the things about Aikido is the training isn't just to be active, have fun, meet people, learn things, but it's to acquire a type of strength. And that's not the type of strength that, just to dominate and win, but to endure in times like this. So, with that in mind, we're going to go into the other room and we'll just do some movement. Okay. So, I'm going to take this with me. And let me make sure. Just checking in. So yes, we do have an audience. Okay. And go back to here. And we could pretty much start almost anywhere. And one of the things, which I kind of tend to do is, Pick this up. I also pick up a staff or simulation of a spear, or sometimes I'll pick up a musical instrument. And when you're doing this, you're not blocking out what's going on out there. And you're also not trying to use this as a defense. There's an opening in your own system. Okay? Not a closing down, not an escape. Then we've gone through things like, there's a check down. Hands. Not so much this grip. See, if I'm here, it's very difficult to get that closing motion. And again, instead of grabbing from the little finger, you could hold from the palm, then little finger. And you have this V between your thumb and index finger here. And you have the same thing here. Not this grip, right? Before, just in holding the sword. Okay, you're filling your palm with energy. And then the fingers kind of extend out. And here they wrap around. But there's that feeling. Right? Now, how I hold this is how I want to, for example, hold for Sankyo, or hard to demonstrate here, but hold for Nikyo. Hold for Ikkyo. Boom. So that grip, it's loose but not sloppy. It's firm but not heavy. Okay? So just picking this up, there's a lot going on in the world. I start to focus. And focus not as an escape. Okay? This motion, for example, here, you would not raise all the way to here, but see, I can't have tension in my shoulders or wrists or elbows to do this. Now the grip is still palm, firm, but not tight. And the extension out. And at the end, there is that closing motion, the double spiral. Okay? And one thing we've been mentioning, this is kind of the form cut. See, the arms are not swinging, but they are extending. And as they're fully extended, you have that closure. See, here I'm not fully extending. I'm closing. Oh. And that closing motion is not just hands, there's a feeling full body behind that. Forearm cup. Now, from there, so I try to establish the fullness of the raise, right? And then fullness of the cut. Here, again, I'm extending into the hands. Here, I'm extending into the sword. Now, what I really want to do is extend way past the sword. Okay? And the body is in that motion. This is just arms and shoulders. There's a little bit of a weight shift. I don't want to make that too pronounced because then right here, there's a gap between here and there. But really what it is there is motion. But really what happens, you have your base or ground, but it's very, very, not loose, but very flexible. And full body, but really what happens is that whole thing, once you got your base, it's got the proper grip, it explodes from your core. I don't think of this as swinging hard. I think of this as it's a vibration, beat vibration that goes through me. Now establishing that cut, that's a shorter raise, okay? And I alternate that with the longer. Okay. So that's a basic cut, cutting to about level with my own hand. And I kind of check. Shoulders are not tense from the cut right there, right? System is relaxed, right? Not in a locked position. The other cut we can do, we've done this a bit, it's just a more shallow raise. So what I'm doing is I'm raising to about my third eye level. This is a deeper cut. Then we add the closing motion. See right here, I don't want to put my weight into the cut. What I really want to do is get this pulse vibration. So if I don't have the ground, that doesn't happen. Boom. If I have the ground, I kind of feel that pulse vibration in my core. Boom, boom. And slow it down, basic form cut. Boom, that's that vibration. Now, and we can also, for example, here, we can make it one motion. Boom. Okay, now try to cut any number of times. I don't even count the cut. I just kind of want to be present, and I'll go through a check down of the basics, the hands, the feet. Feeling I want is not, I'm cutting, but there's that pulse. I don't have the ground. Or okay, so those are things I do. Now, what I find is that it's a kind of misogi, because for me to focus on this, I have to kind of clear. It doesn't take me out of the situation of the pandemic, because we're not doing this to escape. But rather, when I swing this way, I acquire kind of a interior resolve. Boom, boom. Sort of being part of the pulse of creation. Therefore, you are really, this is kind of saying this, I'm going to kill somebody or win. No, you're forming yourself as a part of the pulse or the beat of life. And that's where our strength is. My mind clears. Okay. And we've done a little bit of this where we alternate with the sitting. Sometimes what I'll do is, we have the CNN news on, just not to get away or detach from what's going on, but just to sit. I get the information that's going, but I'm not out here, okay? But also focusing on an interior calm. My pulse is up there right now, just from this. I'm not jumping around or doing anything, but this by itself has kind of intense quality. But the breathing is deep. I kind of watch the sense of the breathing getting deeper, and it becomes a kind of a place where it's breath. In the breath, you're still breathing. What happens is that it gives me the strength to endure. And hopefully not just endure, but to develop. Okay? So swinging the sword, and I'll alternate that with some sitting. Let me swing some more, sit some more. So it's a pattern that I use. It helps me during these times. Yes, we are there. Yeah. Okay. So anybody with a question or comment? Oh, okay. Now, one thing about, just what they call the subudhi cut, it's just repetitive, okay? It does teach you, ideally, the proper grip. This is how I want to hold if I'm taking a wrist. I don't want to hold like this. So, this diagonal grip, I'm going to take a wrist for Sankhya. I don't want to hold this way. I'm going to be holding this way. Even the upper hand, holding like this. Like I'm holding a diagonal grip becomes something. And the palm in the grip. So, when you're swinging the sword, you're actually practicing a lot of the dynamics which can elevate your practice for when we do get back to being able to train with partners. You'll find that you have progressed. It's a good one to do sometimes. It's just this. Here, you notice it bounces or boom, but boom. One-handed boom. Something you can actually do while you are watching TV. Hard to do when you're reading. Okay? But right at this point, boom. See how there's that bounce, but you don't want it to bounce this way or boom. See, I'm pushing it down, putting my weight out there. Boom. And that helps. It's hard to get that closing motion there, but it does help to get that feeling of the vibration. And also when you're uke, you're doing that. There's intention right there. Boom, behind that motion. So you can help your partner, the nage, ikkyo, the motion here, boom. Stepping in for a rimi nage, boom, you have that alignment, see? It's not just dropping my weight. It's get your ground. But your system is loose, relaxed, not sloppy. And you get this aliveness of his beat. Boom. See, if there's it's almost like there's that motion, but right behind is that. That's stepping in, boom, for a rimi nage. Boom. Boom. So stepping in, you're having your base. It's almost like you're stepping in, cutting from the other side. And raising, stepping in, cutting. So those are, the sword and the actual body movements are very close. But so much of the actual training, you can, during this time, really transform your Aikido for when, again, we can open up and have classes. Okay? You'll find that you've progressed. It's also good. See, the left hand is the power hand. And most of the time people swing with their right hand. Right? This is your motor. This is your GPS navigation, the right hand. Okay? But you can take the left hand. Sometimes I'll do this. You do this and watch TV. Okay. I can't do this and read. I can't do this and operate a computer. Okay. And so when you're doing that, it does help you. For example, here, with the two hands, I get the double spiral. Or altering the latter ones, in terms of a lot of things, that's like running wind sprints. This is kind of like, doing more distance running. But you may also start to want short bursts. And mix that in with. And not check, the pulse rate's up, but the breathing is deep and calm. And again, as I'm sitting here, I'm conscious of a calm here. This tends to follow suit. So, and that's important for focusing here. Just going to put this down. I tend to use this inside because I can move more freely. This is a very long step of bow, but you can still use this inside, but you can see, just hit the roof, so you have to really watch that. Okay. This is a little shorter, so you have a little bit more boom. But I use this a lot inside. This was a walking stick I bought at the Nachi Waterfall Grand Shrine in 2014. I went to Japan, visited Hombu Dojo, Actually, I had a private audience with Doshu because I was receiving a promotion. Boom. Boom. But this allows me, for example, to move more freely. Boom. 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 Now, one of the things that is important is that if you just do this suburi cut with a sword, my understanding of what Osensei called the shochikubai, the plum, bamboo, pine, which equates to triangle, circle, square, boom, 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 is the sword becomes, you handle the sword a little bit like it's a spear. Okay, so when we're kind of boom, 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 we're flexible, boom, 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 boom. So you need both. You need the okay. What that tends to do is it tends to build foundation. Gets me in touch with breath. And the suburi becomes sort of what you call kokyu. Okay? Now the staff movements or the spear movements, you start to research kind of what we call the Tai Sabaki. For example, here, see how we're off the line. And the hips rotate, like the body is squeezing into a crack. And what happens, the thrust is straight, but you form a spiral when you do that. Now you'll also move off the line, but a lot of times I'm going to move off the line and from that position go that way. But boom. See, in this motion, boom, you are thrusting and also getting off the line of thrust coming towards you. If you reposition, a lot of times you'll draw the attacker's attention. Okay, so the energy is straight ahead. And then when you're working with a partner, you see the feet do adjust depending on the attack, the energy you're receiving. So the motion here, boom, 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 boom. Oh, oh, oh. And that motion is very much like the sword cut. The thrust, okay. You can also practice this more like the sword. If we do a movement set. Where each movement, boom, can have that closing, focusing motion. Okay, so we've covered that. Then, one thing to do is you get really good at that, is to try to do the whole thing without a step. Yeah. And then that's just all, there's no set in movements. And then the hardest one to do is the whole thing where you're talking about this, boom, or this, you know, you basically, the feeling of that is through all of the movements. So those are things you can do, you know, space willing, in social isolation. It takes a great degree of focus to go through that, even though it's a set of movements. I don't refer to it as a kata. I call it the 30 movement misogi. Because, you know, depending on my emotional, mental, spiritual state, the focus necessary for that creates a better alignment here. And hopefully will give me more tools to deal with the outer world, the pandemic, the Russian hack. There's so many things going on right now. And Budo, martial arts, if it's really going to help us, is going to give us a type of strength, not just to endure, but to keep on the path during this time is very important. Okay, Osensei kept on his path during World War II when his students were dying during the war and the dojos were closed and he had he just had a class of sleepy kids, but he kept training. Okay. Now, the other things I tend to do, for example, with the staff, all right, you can practice the thrust. But the thrust is a really move like a beam of light. Move like a beam of light. Beam of light still going. Move like a beam of light. Move like a beam of light. Move like a beam of light. Fly like lightning. Boom, boom. Move like fly like lightning, strike like thunder. Boom, boom. That lateral motion is a lot like that motion. Boom, boom, boom. That lateral motion can go not just you're striking like thunder, but and it's different than move like a beam of light, strike like thunder. So I let the vibration of the word, as I put the vibration in here, I don't know if these are the words Osensei used, but move like a beam of light. Hikari no yo ni ugoku. Move like a beam of light. That's different than just sort of, okay, I'm going to do move like a beam of light. Move like a beam of light. Move like a beam of light. Fly like lightning. Fly like lightning. Right? Fly like lightning. Strike like thunder. Strike like thunder. So, just those three moves. Fly like lightning. Strike like thunder. And so as you start to develop the feeling of vibration here, the vibration is there, but there's also a real calm space there. In fact, if I'm too this way, I'm not in touch with. So again, you're going from breathing to breath, you get that interior calm. That feeling of you're still in that beam. Boom, you're flying. Boom, strike like thunder. Okay? So those are things I do. When I'm in that state, I am conscious that there's a world situation going on, and a national situation, a local situation. But I'm trying to get to that place in me where I find that strength. And some of it is patience, some of it is compassion. But we can come out of this better. Osensei wanted us to sort of like be living shrines. You know, he used a couple of Buddha images, of Buddhistic images, in the passage I read. And as we begin to do that, you kind of find that, you know, that if you establish that calm, you're standing in a field of vibration, energy, which has different shapes to it. Like the beam of light is a shape in there, flying like lightning. In Bikati no Yoni Tobu, right? And Kaminari no Yoni Utsu. Boom. Boom. Okay, so those are, I don't know if those are the Japanese words Osensei used, but and those vibrations can get very dense, or boom, so I have to let go of an I that worries, that's dragged down, that may be getting somewhat depressed by the situation, and my system clears out. I feel clearer. I feel more able to not just cope, but to deal with this. So I have a type of strength when I approach this practice a certain way. Now, I was also mentioning is a lot of times, for example, like that sort of motion. Somebody's coming in, all right? Now you can go to the side and hit. But one of the things right here, boom, you are getting off the line and cutting at the same time. The off the line blends with the energy coming at you. But the hips rotating down like deliver, boom, that motion. And again, you're treating yourself a variety of different bodies. Each body then has a corresponding, by law, you know, yin yang, right? A corresponding mind. Okay? So, you know, you can boom, very expansive, or boom. See what happens, he's coming in, I'm going this way to intercept. But I'm on the path of attack here, but boom. And so taking all of that expansive motion, boom, densifying it. Okay? Or taking a risk, getting off the line, going that way. I'm starting to move a bit more, even though it's sword, with the lessons of the spear. Okay? So when I read Osensei refer to Sho Chiku Bai, in terms of the sword, I think of how he must have also, at some level, see the actual Subudhi movements, you will get stronger physically, but a lot of this, the lesson of the spear is adaptability. All right, boom, there's thrusting motion, sword and spear, but boom, without being evasive, there's flexibility. And there's rhythm, boom, boom, boom. And so sometimes what you can do is you can phantom fence. Somebody's coming in, you take a risk, get off the line, boom. We're not killing, but we're showing the opening right there. If you finish your cut, this is supposed to be sharp. You cut yourself, off the line, boom. Let you complete your cut, but I'm over here. Somebody's coming over here, over here back, but boom, intercept. Boom. Okay? So those are things that you can do, that I do sometimes, just to kind of raise my spirits during this period. Yeah. So any movement, for example, here, it's like waves rising and crashing, but it's not this sort of motion. And again, not just the whole system is feeling itself as part of that, raising, crashing. And off of that, we can reposition, move into back, 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 and yet intercept. And here, you'll find that, I'm off the line of a thrust or cut. And in getting off the line, the hips are really behind the direction of my own thrust. And so, you've got to kind of, Osensei, I think, cross-trained. He obviously did the stuff with the sword, but he also did a lot of movements, with the staff. And I think his use of the staff was more like a spear movement. So when you use the sword after a bit, it's very flexible, but boom, but you can boom. If you need to, you can take those fine vibrations and boom, densify them. You take a beam of light and all of a sudden, boom, you have a laser. And so there's a whole bunch of things right there that you get in touch with energies. Okay? And when I'm in that zone, I can feel the compassion for what's going on out there, but I'm not so consumed by it. Okay, so that's what helps me through this period, using maybe the Aikido training, which we're allowed to do in a very limited way here. Okay? And let's see. I think what we'll do, we came in here a little early, so we're going to go back into the other room, okay? And we'll check in. So, anybody with a question on any of that stuff? I mean, it's these are very difficult times, so sometimes we kind of look at what might give us the strength to endure, survive, but even progress during this time. Anybody? I mean, so I use the, but you've got a bokken, you've got a staff, you can train. Anybody want to add anything or?
Sensei? Oh,
yes.
Sorry.
Hi. No, well, I'll tell you what. I think Audrey her hand was moving towards it quicker. So why don't we let her speak, then we'll get to you, Cliff, okay?
That's
Audrey?
fine.
I'm not Audrey, but Bonnie, sorry. Okay, yeah.
Sensei, I was just going to say, today was a really good review. As I was exploring just the different feeling, I felt a little bit more into what you were saying, feeling while I was holding the weapon. So good review today.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, for example, if you shift your sense of who you are, you shift your relationship to the world. Like for me, when I'm doing the swinging, I mean, there's a certain area where, you still do your checks, okay? And then you step out of the way, and I start to, for me, the practice becomes more breath and vibration. And of course, that's in physical motion through the body. And when I'm in that state, that whatever it is, I'm very conscious of what's going on in the world, but I'm able to offer a type of compassion, a kind of warmth to it, as opposed to being consumed by it, which is very easily these days. I mean, what we're probably all battling on some form is a type of depression. This is very difficult, okay? But what I'm saying is that, if we really follow Aikido's messages, which means you follow what Osensei said, this is where we need to go past what we would learn in a dojo, okay? The dojo training is wonderful. I hope it comes back as soon as it can, okay? But we are in this situation right now where things are very, very stark. And the expression Osensei used is shinken. Wear masks, socially isolate. The rules are getting stricter right now because the pandemic is getting more out of control. I don't know, it's just, you can't really control that, but you can take precautions. And if everybody did those things, then this current explosion will start to settle in. Okay. So the Aikido, I mean, the training of it, it's a lot of the training is supposed to help us deal with situations like this. Anybody else with anything to bring up? Or
Yeah, I just
yes.
didn't really expect to speak, but I had an insight based on what you were saying
Okay.
a few minutes ago about, how we come out of this. And, my mother passed a little over a week ago. And
Yeah.
the insight I have is that, even if we're going to, the endpoint we're going to is not, it can never be the same as where we entered in March, right? And so
Yes.
it's helping us through it, but it's helping us through it too. I think we need to all sort of keep in mind that it's a different place, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
other side of all of this is not going to be, okay, now we can pick up where we left off. Now we can start training again and just continue on. And we're going to be very different people, even if the training is the same. And so, we're doing, it's kind of like you're on a raft and you're going through the rapids, and, you try and navigate the rapids, but you wind up at the other side of the rapids is not the same place, right?
Well, yeah. Well, remember Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, right? You have this really idyllic situation with the hobbits, right?
Right.
And then you have a couple of them, they go on this quest. They come back and they're changed. They've encountered worlds outside of their shire, right? And they're not the same. In fact, Frodo actually leaves, goes with the elves. He's that transformed. Is that good? Is it bad? It's just the fact that oftentimes, no, Sensei addressed this, by the way. Hikizuchi Sensei used to always quote Osensei, and what he would say is, Kino no Budo wa mutameta. Yesterday's Budo is already useless. And so from this, our whole meaning of what we call Budo or martial arts is going to change. And, it's evolve. So I think that, this is, as much as it's a very trying time, it also is a potential for growth. So yeah, it's going to be different. And I think Osensei kind of, he would sort of, if I sort of get the gist of it, that the Aikido people become like, he's talking to you about being a Buddha temple, Buddha temple or a shrine, that hopefully when we go out into that very different world, that will somehow sort of shine or vibe in a way that gives other people strength.
I like that.
Yeah, so, in a sense, this is a very important period for working on ourselves. See, light without warmth will just blind you. So light, warmth, okay? And, the term Osensei used is power, heat, light, warmth, light, power. But, you could be the toughest MMA person on the planet. You're not going to beat the virus and its effects. So sometimes you have to kind of look at the purposes of your training. And something like Aikido is really geared towards, a type of development and evolution. And, when we do get back together, there's the activity of training, which we all miss. But the real message of training is training. And it's nice to have the activity that we can do and that we enjoy. But the training itself is supposed to help us deal with whatever's going on. Nado Sensei likes this whole thing about situation, right? And so here we are forging ourselves through our training to be what Osensei is talking about, like a Buddha tower or a living shrine, something like that. And then, there'd be people that do all the trendy martial arts stuff, but the Aikido has a potential for really re-emerging through all this and setting itself, it's already apart, but setting itself apart in a good way. So that part of it, I think, is very important for all of us to look at as we are going forward. You're right. When a lot of things come back, it will still be a very different world. Exactly. So I don't know, those are just things to kind of mull on. I mean, it's getting so much more intense. Sad to say, I used to, earlier in the pandemic, I'd look at the numbers increasing and would say something like, well, maybe this will get so-and-so out of the office. Like, this is a good thing. And then now, it was that, and I admit it's a very, very, very immature way of looking at it, very selfish way of looking at it. But right now, it's like, okay, the only thing you can really do is open your heart. I had this discussion with Nado Sensei yesterday, and he was saying, yeah, you pay too much attention to the world. The coronavirus is just a situation. This is what you got to do. And I kind of agree with him that way, but also at the same time is you're a person. And, I do not think, there's one thing apparently Osensei told Nado Sensei. One, he was given the mission by the divine forces of Kami to stop the war. He tried. He and somebody pretty high up in the government, the Japanese government was saying one reason for the war, we're an island nation, will be cut off from oil. And so Osensei, and I don't have the person's name, actually worked on brokering deals to get the island oil. And what I understand was the guy that was pretty high up in the government, he disappeared. And those Sensei began to realize, okay, I'm probably next. That's one of the reasons, apparently, it's not really said very much, that he went to Iwama. Because Tokyo was getting too dangerous for him. He was a radical. He was an activist. And then, if you read his stuff, he says, you know, I sensed something like Hiroshima, Nagasaki was going to happen. He could just sense it. He didn't know it, he could feel, sense it. And the other thing he told Nado Sensei was, and you're that conscious. Well, guess what? Hiroshima, Nagasaki, he could feel the children burning. He didn't use his training to escape anything. In fact, he probably felt it much more intensely than any of us could. He was that developed. So there's a tendency to think, well, you know, he was in these magical spaces and everything. No, I don't think he missed anything. But I think he knew that if that dragged him down, or he stopped his own development, that was not the way to go. He kept growing. And so when the war ended, and, you know, Aikido, because of its nature, was the first martial art that was allowed to open. It was given a charter in 1948. That was my birth year. Okay? So he was very active. And, you know, we think, well, he went to, you know, up north to farm to just escape the war. No, there's a reason for that. It was getting too hot for him because of how active he was. He was high profile. He was teaching, military, police. He had connections to the royal family. He was right there. And he realized when this guy disappeared, he was probably going to be next. So yeah, I mean, he took, probably the wisest thing was say, I'm not going to stand here and be stupid and be the next person to disappear. He did his best in his limited world to try to stop the war, because that's what the kami told him. So, you know, he's still our best example of growth. And the degree to which sometimes we put him in that particular thing, well, he was just so enlightened, none of this mattered to him. No, I think in that space, he felt things a million times more intensely than we did. That was probably one of the reasons he did the misogi he did. Okay? I mean, really, I mean, we think, I'm going to do this to escape the world's pain. No, you can't do that now. But instead of being dragged down by that pain, we can go interior and go to that place of heat or warmth and light. And then there's kind of that, you know, what power is right there, for me, it's like, you know, there's that unshakable resolve. That's kind of the Buddha tower, or he or she who stands on that floating bridge amidst everything that's going on. I mean, you know, if you want to watch something, watch Thor Ragnarok. You know, that was the last Thor movie, and actually was, I think, by far the best. And the ancient Ragnarok, which is the destruction of Asgard. And Thor realizes at the end, if you haven't seen it, the only way to save Asgard is to let go of Asgard. And so sometimes you hear the ancient prophecy, or, oh my God, we're all doomed. Okay, I gotta let it go. I gotta sacrifice Asgard to save Asgard. And so that is kind of what we're doing right now, is that, you know, we have our old views of ourselves and the world. Some of it good, some of it like, eh. But that's kind of like a sacrifice, because there has to be a new order. There has to be a more evolved, compassionate, open. So when Nado Sensei said that, I said, you know, I think you're right, but you know, I can't go there. I don't think the whole thing is just to, okay, now I got this situation, now I'm going to align and be a character in this situation that doesn't worry about it. No, I mean, this energy. And, you know, for me is a little bit like, I can't go there. Yeah, I mean, at that point. See, I think you can use Osensei in a very negative way. What would Osensei say? Well, I think Osensei would probably, you know, tell each of us, you know, this is a very challenging time, and this is where you really are training, and you know, develop, you know, the light inside you or me, the not just the heat, but the warmth, the compassion that comes out of that light, and then the power, not that sort of power. So power to, you know, it's the way that he was. He woke up every day. He built an Aikido. You know, he couldn't stop the war, but he built the Aikido shrine, and he laid a foundation, really, for post-war, for Aikido to have an influence on the world, and it actually has. Okay, his message is very more vital today than it was when he was physically alive here. Okay. So, you know, those are just some of my thoughts, you know, because we've talked about how do you stand on the floating bridge of heaven during the pandemic? Well, you stand very grounded, but you also stand where that light and warmth and that resolve, that focus. He built the shrine, but he was also, yeah. Nado Sensei said one thing Osensei would say is Aiki Jinja no Kami-sama. The Kami of the Aiki shrine. Well, the shrine was him, as much as it's a physical building. By taking the task of building that shrine, he was doing his best to fulfill what the Kami gave him as an order: stop the war. Well, I tried now, but I'm going to build a shrine now. But, you know, waking every day, doing his misogi, his training, farming, teaching very limited classes. That was something where, when the war did end, Aikido was the first martial art that was allowed. It was granted a charter to open. And of course, a lot of people worked in the government, his connections to get that. But it was his resolve, his warmth and light that paved the way for it. No Osensei, no Aikido. Okay? Anybody else with a question or comment before we close? Tomorrow, we will be doing our training in the park. Let's see, next week, I plan to do the noon on Monday, the noon on Wednesday, and also the Wednesday evening kind of Tai Chi club meeting. And then from Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve, we will be taking a break. Chill, settle. But, you know, one thing that when I remember to do it, you know, I'll get up before I actually eat anything, and let's just pick the sword up and swing a couple of times. You know, just to kind of start the day with a little bit more of that focus, that strength, that light, that warmth. Little things, you know, and then, you know, during the day, I'll kind of more concentrated periods of actual focus and training. And sometimes I'll just listen to CNN, close my eyes, absorb what's coming in, but also try to balance that out in here. So those are things that I do. So, you know, I'm not sure that's the best way of standing on the floating bridge of heaven during the pandemic, but it's my way. Okay, we each have to find our own. Okay, so we take Osensei's words, we apply it to this situation ourselves here and now. Okay, anybody else? Okay, then I'm going
Thank you,
to.
sir.
Okay, yes, and some of you, hopefully I'll see you in the park. Okay, tomorrow. Goodbye.